to heaven, I'll tell you how. Set your hand to the gospel plow. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. If that plow stays in your hand, head you straight to the promised land. Oh, keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Keep your eyes fixed on the track. Can't plow straight if you're looking back. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Keep plowing and don't you tire. Every row goes higher and higher. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Go ahead, Carl. Hold on, hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. About the harvest, well, now don't you fret. Jesus ain't lost nobody yet. Oh, keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. If your neighbor ain't a plowing too, let it be. What is that to you? Keep your hand on the plow. Oh, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your hand on the plow. Hold on. Wanna get to heaven, I'll tell you how. Set your hand to the gospel plow.
Reading to you from Hebrews chapter 11. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. And it is by faith that those of old gained approval. And it is by faith that we understand that the worlds were created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made from something that already existed, but made from nothing. Man. I have competition. No one can out-compete a preacher, hallelujah. Okay. You should hear it all the way up. You know you're in trouble when I hold the mic in my hand.
Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I laid my burden down, glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I laid so much better since I laid my burden down. I feel better, so much better since I laid like shouting, shouting hallelujah. Since I laid my burden down, feel like shouting, shouting hallelujah. Since I laid with my Savior, since I laid my burden down. I am walking with my Savior, since I laid my burden down. On to glory, since I laid my burden down. As I'm going on to glory, since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I laid my burden down. Glory, glory. Hallelujah. Since I laid my burden down. Since I laid my burden down.
I want to talk to you about physics for a minute. I know, physics, what? So here's the thing. Light travels at a very specific speed through a vacuum. It goes 186,300 miles a second. It doesn't speed up and it doesn't slow down. It will go faster or slower if it goes through something, like when it hits water, it slows down, which is why when you take a stick and push it into the water, it looks shorter and it looks like it bent. That's because the light is slowing down, so it creates this illusion in your eye. But the light itself in a vacuum always goes the same rate of speed. Now here's what that means. The sun is 93 million miles away. And so if we could imagine that the sun had a light switch on it, you could just turn it off. If somebody turned the sun off right now, we would not know about it for 8 minutes. That's how long it takes for the light to reach us. So when you look up in the sky at the sun, you are looking back in time 8 minutes. If you look at our closest stellar neighbor, that is a star that's the nearest to our star, that star is called Proxima Centauri. When you look at that star, you're looking back in time 4.2 years. There is a galaxy called the Andromeda Galaxy. It's the closest galaxy to ours. When you look at that galaxy, you are looking back in time 250 million years. So what this means is that astronomers and cosmologists are basically time travelers. They get their telescopes and they look as far away as they can, and the farther away they can see, the farther back in time they are looking. And so right now they're looking back a little over 16 billion years in time. That's how far back they're going. And they're trying to, get there. They're curious about like the beginning of everything and how does the universe come into existence and where does it come from? And they're pushing it back, and every time they get a new and better telescope, they go further and further back in time. But there's a little bit of a problem that they know is coming, but they're trying. I think they're in denial at the moment. They're going to run into something called the event horizon. And the event horizon is a wall that you can't see beyond. Anything that happens after the event horizon, they should be able to pick up on their instruments, but nothing before the event horizon. So they're going to run into a wall and they have no idea what's on the other side. Now these are the guys who are looking at the big picture. There's another group of physicists looking at the small picture. These are called the quantum physicists, and they have the same problem. When they look for something, if you look, they take a picture, they go, look, see that blob right there? That's an atom. Wow. Let's look closer, because we know atoms are made of protons and neutrons and electrons. Let's look closer. And you keep looking closer, and you keep looking closer, and when you get close enough, you don't see anything. It disappears. It turns into like nothing, a blur, a smudge, a vibration. It's gone. Right? So you can see it when you back up, but the minute you go too close, it's gone. And so this is also a kind of event horizon for them, because they can only get so far, and then they can't see past that line, whatever that line is. And so we have this, the poor physicists in both the big scale astronomy and cosmology and the small scale, they have the same problem. And one of the physicists talked about this problem, and I want to read it to you, so I have to open my phone. I apologize for that. His name is Robert Jastrow, and Robert Jastrow said these words. He said, "For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountain of ignorance, he has conquered the highest peak, and as he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries." It's because in theology, all of the great theologies recognize the same two event horizons. They give it a different name. In theology, it's most often called the cloud of unknowing. But there is this line. For example, if I do in theology kind of like the quantum physicist, in other words, I look close, I might say something like, God is love. Now, I say that to you and you go, wow, that makes sense. I can really relate to that. But if I start looking too closely and I say to myself, well, what exactly is love? Can we define love? The minute you try, then you're like, wait a second, that's not quite it, is it? I write this definition, what Webster says, and then, no, that's not exact. It's more than that. And we start trying to define it, and the harder we try, the more it disappears. Until we run into an event horizon. We can say it only if we back away, but if we get too close, it's gone. Now, if we go the other way, because that's one half of the theologians, they go that direction, the other half go the other direction. They say, let's ask the big questions. What is the ultimate nature of reality and the ultimate nature of God? And they go tracking after that, and they start to talk about God, and they say things like God is omniscient, means God knows everything, and God is omnipresent, which means God is everywhere, and then God is all powerful, right? Omnipotent is that word, all powerful. What does that mean, actually? And so you start running into the problem, because they go, well, that means God can do anything. No, that's not true. I can tell you something God can't do. Get lost. Right? God can't get lost. God is everywhere. So wherever God is, it's here. So God cannot be lost, because God is omnipresent. So all of a sudden, what starts to happen is as they do that big theology, you run into the thing. You run into this sort of wall that you hit, this event horizon, this this cloud of unknowing, because you start to realize that when you talk about God, the language will fall apart. And ultimately, what I say about, if I say God is love, on the one hand, that's true. And on the other hand, it limits who God is. If I say, you know, like it limits God. And the word love isn't big enough to describe whatever it is it's trying to describe. And so there I am again, just like the ones who are going close to the law, trying to read the scriptures and get the words right. Same problem going the other direction. I run into the event horizon. I run into the cloud of unknowing. But here's the difference. So the astronomer says it ends like a bad dream for the astronomer, but not for the theologian. Because here's what happens. When I reach that place, when I do that work, when I push it to the limit of knowing, when I realize, you know, you ever have one of those arguments with somebody about religion? That's why they say never talk about religion or politics. Yeah, because you always end up arguing. And then you're like, arr, 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 I'm right and you're wrong. And then all of a sudden you're done with the argument, and then you can't help but wonder. There's a little part of your brain going, what if they're right? And you have to shout that down into submission. Like, it's not, I'm right, they're not right, I'm right. Well, you know what? You think when you hit that cloud of unknowing, that's where you're going to end up? Like it's going to be, I'm going to be full of doubts. But that's not where you end up. It's the weirdest thing, but when you get to that place, when you push the theology as far as it'll go, when you kind of come to grips with as much as your brain can absorb, and you realize that that's never enough to talk about who God is, and you get to that place, the event horizon of God, of the mind, the cloud of unknowing, and you stand there, you find you are not disoriented, and you are not unmoored, and you are not confused. And you have questions. Sure, you have questions. In some ways, you have more questions. But you don't have doubt. And you have confidence, but not certainty. How do you know you're right? I might be wrong. I'm not certain. I don't need to be certain. When I stand in that place, I realize something, and this is what the writer of the book of Hebrews is trying to say, that faith itself is a kind of knowing. It's a way in which we know a thing separate from our brains, separate from language, separate from words, separate from anything here. Faith has the capacity to pierce the veil, to cut across through the event horizon into the cloud of unknowing, and to stand there in the presence of God. And what that means is when we get to that place, when we haven't built our theology and our Christian lives around all of this stuff that we have come to intellectually believe, but we step past that, we find we are on solid ground. We are anchored. And we come to know that we are loved. We sense the love that calls us and embraces us, and we feel connected to it all. We are not lost. We are found. This is what faith does. Faith is the substance and the evidence of what the eye cannot see and the mind cannot grasp. Now, you know me. Well, most of you know me. So you know I'm kind of hung up on theology, and I'm one of those guys who likes to get the language just right. And I love the old theological and doctrinal debates. Doctrine, yay! But I might be wrong. You understand? But that's okay. I'm not afraid of that. Because my faith is not ultimately built on the intellectual doctrine I hold to. That's why I'm a Christian. But my faith and my confidence is because I have stood in that place. And I have known that I am heard. That my cry mattered to someone. That I was loved. And once I came to know that, I was okay with the rest of it. I was not afraid. I am not afraid. We are not afraid, because faith is the substance and faith is the evidence. Can you find out?
My latest sun is sinking fast. My race is nearly run. My strongest trial, oh, they now are past. My triumph has begun. Oh, come, Holy One. Behold, they come. I hear the sound of wings. Oh, come, angel band, come and around me stand. Oh, bear me away on your snow white wings. My immortal home, bear me away on your snow white wings. My immortal home. Oh, come, angel band, come and around me stand. Oh, bear me away on your snow white wings to my immortal home. Oh, bear me away on your snow white wings to my immortal home. Wait